in the breakout room. So take it away, Kathy.
All righty. Welcome everybody to this Empathy Cafe, the first of what we hope will be many. What's the role of empathy in conflict transformation, peace building, and security are the topics we want to explore. I'm Kathy Kidd. I'm with the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy and also the Peace Alliance. And let's see if anybody here can facilitate a circle that's trained to do it. Put ECF after your name. And as Edwin mentioned, if you don't mind being recorded, you can put an R after your name, but you don't have to be recorded. So this event is hosted by Edwin at the Center for a Culture of Empathy and co-hosted by COPC, which stands for Conflict Transformation, Peace Building and Security, and by the Peace Alliance. And we invite other peace building organizations to join us in co-hosting future empathy cafes. And we want to host one of these every month. So the intention for this empathy cafe is to bring peace building communities together for networking, personal support, building communities within your organization and across organizations, as well as looking at how we can innovate and build skills around peace building. And so is Pascal here to talk about COPC, or Edwin, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I don't see him here, so I wasn't sure if he could make it. So the Conflict Transformation, Peacekeeping and Security Group, or COPC, is a leading network on peace building and conflict transformation, counting more than 60,000 members. They have I know they have a LinkedIn group with about 40,000 people on that. We're working together with them. I'm Edwin Rutch from the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and our center is the largest empathy building resource on the internet. So, and Kathy, you'll say something about Peace Alliance?
Yes, the Peace Alliance has a mission to educate, advocate, and mobilize people into action to transform systems and public policy toward a culture of peace. Our vision is to cultivate peace building to create a world where everyone and everything thrives. We feature a national monthly Peace Builder podcast. We've been doing that for 15 years. Fundamental cornerstone of the Peace Alliance is to be the peace we want to see in the world. And we have 5 cornerstones we focus on: community peace building, humanizing justice systems, cultivating personal peace, fostering international peace, practicing peace in schools. And our signature legislation is HR 1111, a cabinet level Department of Peace Building, which is an idea which has been around in our country since the late 1700s. It's not a new idea. It's been introduced into Congress many times. And we also support other legislation. So you can go to peacealliance.org to find out more about us. And so now we're going to show a 6-minute video on how to do an empathy circle. But we'll also, when we break out into smaller groups, there's trained facilitators and other people who have done the empathy circles that will help with those who are new to the empathy circle. So sometimes just doing it is the best way to learn it, but we are going to do this intro video.
Okay, here we go. This is 6 minutes. So this will just show you how to take part in the empathy circle, which we'll do in the breakout rooms. I'd like to welcome you to this short presentation on how to take part in a basic empathy circle. So next, let's look at the step-by-step how to take part. An empathy circle starts with 2 to 7 participants. Here on the screen, we have 4 participants, which I find is an ideal number. There are 4 basic roles, and the roles rotate among the participants as the empathy circle unfolds. 1, the speaker, is the first person to speak. 2 is active listener who actively listens to the speaker. There's the silent listeners, they quietly observe and witness. And the facilitator who organizes, schedules, and hosts the circle. They also do the timekeeping, and they have some experience with the process and help keep participants in the process. However, everyone has the responsibility to hold the process and the practice. So to begin with, the facilitator will start the empathy circle. They welcome the participants. They lead introductions if the participants don't know each other. The facilitator invites participants to give short introductions, for example, their name, where they're from, and something personal about themselves. The facilitator then reviews the empathy circle process to remind everyone how it works. They announce the discussion topic, if there is one. Even if there is a topic, you can always talk about what is alive for you. That is what is on your mind in the moment. And 5, they set the speaker time limits, perhaps 5 minutes, for example. And the facilitator then asks who would like to start to be the first speaker. So at that point, the participant volunteers to be the first speaker. As speaker, you select who will be your active listener, and you can select anyone that you want. You speak about the topic given or whatever is alive for you, and so you'll speak a bit until you have maybe expressed an idea or two, and then you want to pause to give the active listener a chance to recap what they understand that you are saying and feeling. If you say too much, the listener may have difficulty in reflecting it. As the active listener, you are listening to the speaker to get an understanding of what they're saying and what is important to them. You are giving them your full attention as a supportive companion on their inner journey and exploration. When the speaker pauses, you recap your understanding of what they said and how they feel by reflecting the essence of that in your own words. You can summarize, paraphrase, or even say the speaker's words back to them. Even though you may have a strong impulse to respond with your own ideas, judgments, analysis, advice, and sympathy, or even questions, resist the impulse to do so because these common responses block the speaker from moving along their internal journey. You'll be able to say whatever you want when it is your turn to be the speaker. If you don't reflect the understanding to the speaker's satisfaction, they can always say it again. Then as speaker, you check, do you feel understood to your satisfaction? If you do not feel understood, you can say it again, perhaps in different words. If you do feel understood, continue sharing. Again, after speaking a bit, pause to give your active listener a chance to recap their understanding of what you said. As the active listener, you again share your understanding of what the speaker said and meant. The cycle of speaking and reflecting continues until you, as the speaker, do not have anything else you'd like to say, or until you get a signal from the timekeeper. If you get a signal from the timekeeper, then finish up what you're saying in a sentence or two. After you get a final reflection, you can end your turn by saying something like, "I feel fully heard," or something like that to indicate you are done with your speaking turn. At that point, the roles then rotate. The active listener becomes the speaker. The person they select becomes the new active listener. For everyone having equal time, it is good to select someone that hasn't spoken lately, but it is your choice. The others in the circle become the silent listeners. This process of taking turns in speaking and active listening continues for whatever time is allotted for the empathy circle. And this was just a very short introduction. The best way to learn the practice is taking part and doing it. There is more in-depth material on taking part in an empathy circle and facilitating one at empathycircle.com. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Edwin. So we're going to break out into smaller circles. And remember, if you don't mind being recorded for educational purposes, you can put an R after your name. If you click on the 3 dots in the top right-hand corner of your window where you see yourself, it'll say, oh no, it doesn't do that. You have to click on your name and it'll tell you, it'll say rename, and you can add R to your name. So we're going to take, let's see, 90 minutes to go into circles, and you'll have a trained facilitator in your circle, and other people probably will have done an empathy circle too, because there are some experienced people here. And we're going to take 5-minute turns, and we are going to, the topic is going to be, what do you see as the role of empathy in conflict transformation, peace building, and security? Or you can talk about whatever is alive in you. So anything we want to add, Larry, Bill, or Edwin, Linda? Are we ready to go?
Are you putting the question in chat? Okay, I see it.
Yeah, it's in the chat. And there's also a link to that how-to. There's a 1-page PDF. There's the link to it there as well for anyone that wants to read that while you're in the breakout room. So we're ready to go into the breakout rooms, and the one I'm in will be recorded, and the one Bill is in is recorded. If you want to wave your hand, Bill. Yeah, so sure. Those 2 groups are going to be recorded. And actually, Larry, if you're feeling comfortable with recording, everyone in your group said they're okay with recording, but that's not necessary. Maybe just the 2 is enough. So we have 4 and 5 people in each, 4 or 5 people in each group. And we're locking the rooms now, so we're not letting new people into the cafe unless you've, sometimes if you're in a room and then you get dropped out, you come back in, we'll try to get you back in, but sometimes that can be a bit problematic. So hopefully that will work though. And I think we're ready to go. And you'll see the facilitator in the group is has the ECF under their name, and you'll be in charge of being the first listener and sort of modeling the practice. So here we go into the rooms. Enjoy, and see you in about not a little bit more than 90 minutes.
Looks like this is our group.
Yes, we have a great looking group here. If you don't mind, Divine, if you would show yourself, it really helps with the communication if we actually see your face when you're talking.
I think they're actually another group. Somehow they haven't made the transition. It's just the 5 of us here.
Okay, it's just, okay.
There she goes. There you go. Not
Alex.
Yeah.
All right. All right. My name is Linda Bass, and we're going to have a good experience today. Anyone in the group has participated in the empathy circle before?
No.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm just going to recap real quick what Edwin said in the 6-minute video. We have the active speaker, the active listener, the silent listeners. Silent listeners mean just that, silent. You don't comment, you don't ask questions, you just listen. Everyone is going to have a turn, so you're guaranteed a turn. You have the speaker who will speak in small chunks because our brains can't hold a whole lot of information at one time. So you speak in small chunks, and then you give the listener an opportunity to reflect back to you what you said. You don't have to parrot what the person said. You just summarize or reflect back what they said as best you can. If you didn't understand what they said, maybe you didn't catch a word or a phrase or whatever, you can say, can you repeat that? And that's okay. When you're listening, don't get frustrated if you can't summarize, because this takes practice. Listening in the empathy circle is intentional. So you can't have any distractions, looking at your cell phone or whatever. Everyone will have 5 minutes to speak on the topic. What do you see is the role of empathy in conflict transformation, peace building, and security? Or you can speak on whatever is resonating in your spirit at this time. You can take notes, because some people will take notes, especially if you are the silent listener and someone says something that when it's your turn, you want to, piggyback on or comment on, you can just, if you have to or need to, take notes. And then when it's your turn, you can say whatever you want to say. We ask that you don't comment, you don't ask questions, you just summarize what the speaker said to you. A good way to understand is agreeing. Understanding does not mean you agree. You just understand what the person is saying. So you have the active speaker, speaks in 5 minutes in small chunks. You have the active listener who reflects back what the speaker said. Then you have the silent listeners who just remain silent until it's your turn. And I will facilitate the group, so to make sure everybody gets a turn and to go around. So did everybody, you can see the question in the chat. You can speak on that question or whatever is resonating in your spirit. So any questions? And Edwin is correct. The best way to do it, to learn it, is to do it. This is a safe space, and it is just safe. Okay, so I want you to relax and enjoy the experience. I'm going to start by modeling how this goes by being the first listener. Okay, so first you listen, I'll be the listener, and then when the speaker is finished, their 5 minutes is up, and I'll keep the time, so you don't have to worry about that. As soon as I get to my clock, there it is. I'll keep the time, and when your time is up, I'll hold up a sign like this, time. Now, if you're in the middle of speaking or in the middle of reflecting, please finish your thought. We don't want to just cut you off in the middle of a sentence or whatever. If you are going too much, because I do talk a lot, personally, I can get on a roll. You'll see a sign like this. Can you see it? That says pause. That means slow down, take a break, give the listener an opportunity to reflect back what you said, okay? So I'm going to start off by being the first listener. And I'm going to ask Siraj. I apologize up front. I can tear up anybody's name. So even my name sometimes. Siraj. So I'm going to ask you to be the first speaker if you don't have any objections.
No objection.
Okay, and you will speak to me for 5 minutes on this topic or whatever is alive for you. And as the listener, I'm going to reflect back to you the best I can what you said. So remember to speak in small chunks. Okay, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. All right, go.
Hello, Linda and everybody. Thank you to Empathy Circle for giving me this space to share my story and what I think about Empathy Circle in empathy in conflict transformation and peace building and many other spheres. Before I jump into that, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Siraj. I was born in Bhutan, a small country in between Tibet or China and India.
Okay, Siraj, you started off by thanking everybody for being here and welcoming everybody. You said that I'm sorry. You said that you're from, and I'm not going to pronounce that, but it's in India.
In between Tibet and India, Bhutan.
In between Tibet and India. Okay.
As we know, there are many conflicts, and conflicts destroyed life, human beings. Same thing had happened in my life in Bhutan in 1990s. more than 130,000 Bhutanese citizens were expelled forcefully by the government of Bhutan.
Okay, so Bhutan, you're saying 130,000 people were expelled from Bhutan because of conflict, and we all have conflict.
Right. I was 9 years old at that time. I was young, second grade student, but overnight, my family and I left Bhutan with no any destination.
Okay, so you were 9 years old, second grade, when you and your family left Bhutan with no clear destination of where you were going. You were expelled.
After walking whole night, next whole day, and the next night we arrived at the border of Nepal. We were thirsty, we were hungry, we had no money in our pockets, and we had no place to go in. However, we were sold way to go to Nepal.
Okay, so after 2 nights, a day and 2 nights walking, you and your family arrived at the border of Nepal. You had no money, you were hungry, no food, but you were glad that you arrived in Nepal.
Right. There was a Hindu temple at the place called Kakarvita. We were given food, we were given water, and we lived there for 2 nights. We slept there for 2 nights. And we found that there were refugee camps in Nepal for Bhutanese refugees.
And so you arrived, when you got to Nepal, you went to this Hindu temple where they gave you a place to stay for a couple of nights, food and water, and you found a refugee camp or location for Buddhists.
For Bhutanese refugees.
For Buddhist refugees, okay.
Bhutanese, people from Bhutan is called Bhutanese, Bhutanese, so Bhutanese refugees.
Bhutanese.
Right.
Refugees, Bhutanese,
so,
okay.
After arriving in one of the refugee camps in Nepal called Timai Bhutanese Refugee Camp, we started building a makeshift camp with, with bamboo wall, with banana leaves thatch roof, and it was like natural, habitat for us. We had no clean drinking water. We had no food. For 2 years, we became wanderers. We went nearby village and asked for food.
So once you got to the Bhutanese refugee camp, you pitched a tent. Well, you created a structure made out of bamboo wall, banana thatch roof. You had no clean water, drinking water. And I can't remember the last thing you said. You were there for 2 years. You were there for 2 years.
Yeah. So, okay. Fast forward.
Okay.
I lived in that, after 2 years, there were many international agencies helping Bhutanese, helping us. I lived in refugee camp for 19 years.
Okay, so there were international services there to help. Yes. And you lived in that camp for 19 years. Okay, Suraj, do you feel fully heard?
My story is not done yet.
I know, but with your 5 minutes, do you feel like I reflected back to you what you were saying?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And when it's your turn again, you can continue the story or speak on what you want to speak on, okay? But when you have your 5 minutes, it's up. That gives everybody else time. Okay. So now I was the listener. I will become the speaker, and I will pick Alex. Alex, are you ready to listen? Okay, and I have the same 5 minutes as everyone else, so I'm going to reset. The role of empathy in peace conflict transformation and peace building, I think is important.
Do you want me to stop and interject now?
Say back to me what I said,
Okay.
or reflect back to me what I said.
Okay. Linda, you think that the role of empathy in peace and conflict transformation is important?
Yes, I am a mediator. So I am a neutral, I serve as a neutral party between individuals or companies that are having disputes and conflict.
Mm-hmm. You are a neutral party to disputes and conflict because of your role as a mediator.
Correct. And the best way, or the way, because it's a process, mediation is a process, to start the mediation is to let each party tell their story, what the dispute is about from their perspective.
Mm-hmm. Because mediation is a process, you decide to start with letting each party to the mediation begin with their version of the story.
Correct. And by doing that, it allows them to release some emotions, or the emotions that's generated by that dispute. And then we can move on to coming up with ways to resolve the dispute.
In people telling their stories, they have an opportunity to discharge some of the emotions, and that helps you move on to getting the business done of resolving the dispute.
Yes. As the process goes forward, I continue to ask questions and listen to the individual's responses.
Mm-hmm. You listen to the individual's responses as the process moves forward.
Yes. And by listening, I am able to empathize with whoever is speaking. I don't sympathize with them, but I empathize with them. I start to see the conflict from their point of view, whether it's right or wrong.
You use empathy to listen to people as they tell you about their perspective of the conflict.
Yes, because as I was told years ago, a person's perception is their reality.
Mm-hmm. Because of this idea that holds true for you, a person's perception is their reality.
Yes. So in peace building, you, in my opinion, you have to listen to what the person is saying. And in that way, in that intentional listening, you're actually stepping into their shoes for a moment and seeing the situation from their perspective.
Intentional listening for you is about understanding the perspective of the other person by placing yourself in their shoes.
Yes. Another one of my favorite sayings is, understanding is not agreeing. You want to understand what the person is saying and understand where they're coming from. That does not mean that you have to agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Something that really resonates for you is this idea that listening and understanding is not the same as agreeing.
That's true. So whether it's politics, and I'm very interested in politics, or a family dispute or a co-worker's dispute, it starts with listening, understanding, and seeing the situation from that person's point of view. To me, that's empathy.
Mm-hmm. So regardless of the kind of dispute, whether it's in your family or outside your family relating to politics or something else, for you, empathy is the first step to truly getting on the same page, or
Yes.
deeply understanding someone.
Yes. And again, empathy and sympathy are two different things. Sympathy means I feel sorry for you. Empathy means I see it from your perspective.
Mm-hmm. The difference for you between empathy and sympathy is that empathy is being able to see something from someone's perspective, and sympathy is feeling sorry for someone.
Yes, correct. I feel fully heard. My 5 minutes is not up, but I feel fully heard. Okay, so now Alex, you were the listener and you did a very good job reflecting. Now you can pick someone to that you can speak to and they can reflect to you, back to
Sure.
you.
Okay, well, how about Mandeep? We haven't heard from you yet.
And you have 5 minutes, whenever you want to start.
Okay. I am here today because I'm on a scholarship which has a very frightening name, and the name is called an International Peace Fellowship.
Hi, Alex. So Alex is here on a scholarship called International Peace Scholarship, if I understand it correctly, and she will tell us more about that. And
Yeah, and it's an amazing and life-changing opportunity, but it comes with a huge set of responsibilities and a lot of expectations about what you might do with your time in the scholarship.
so on one side, if it's a scholarship, it's great and you have got it. But at the same time, you realize that since it's a scholarship, it's a reward. You have a lot of responsibilities as well to what you're expected to do with the role you have got.
Yes, exactly. And one of the things that I have noticed is getting in the way of me fully realizing the value and the ambition of this scholarship is some of the challenges I have with people's different opinions.
So if I hear correctly, one of the things or obstacles that you have been facing to fulfill the expectations of the scholarship is that sometimes it's difficult to understand and comprehend the opinion of the other, which might be different from your opinions.
Yes, the problem is that I think I can understand it, like I can understand what they're saying, but sometimes what they say, depending on what they're saying, makes me feel so angry or makes me feel so upset or makes me feel so shocked.
So based on your world opinion and beliefs and ideology, perhaps opinions of some other may really incite an extreme reaction from you, oscillating from anger to sadness and other related things.
Yes, exactly. And obviously, this is a problem because it stops me from doing what I claim to be doing, which is peace building. And I feel like it's my role and my ethical duty to deeply learn some of these skills that enable to be more effective in doing this work of peace building.
So based on your self-introspection and assessment, you realize that you have to somehow overcome this challenge and be able to hear people and not cloud your judgment so that you can truly fulfill the role of a peacemaker, keeping your personal opinions aside.
Yes, and I see that the way to do that is through empathy. And intellectually, that makes a lot of sense to me, and I can understand and read and listen to a lot of empathy. But in the moment, feeling the empathy becomes a challenge when the idea or opinion is very different from what I believe.
So I think there is a difference between the theoretical knowledge of empathy, and we all know that it might be universal good, but when it comes to action and implementing it in your day-to-day life, during the heat of the moment, it might just elude you.
I feel very heard. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad.
All
Now,
right.
do I have to nominate? I think.
Now you become the speaker and you can pick someone to listen to you. And that person will reflect back to you, just like you reflected back to Alex. And you will speak in small chunks, just like Alex did.
Perfect. So I'll nominate Edwin since he hasn't been before.
Okay, I'm listening.
All right. First of all, good morning, good evening, wherever we are, based on the time zone, everyone. Hi, my name is Mandeep. It's nice to be here. I'm from India, and I will pause quickly. So, like Linda, I am also a mediator, a very young one, though. I've just entered the field. I did my course from Tel Aviv University, Israel.
Okay, so you're greeting everyone, saying welcome to everyone, introducing yourself as Mandeep from India. And like Linda, you're also a mediator, and you just finished a course on that from the university.
Yeah, and today's topic is really interesting for me because this is something I do and I study about. And I also have some personal history in my family of refugees, being my parent or being my father or grandfather. So for me, I think the first issue which I would like to elaborate upon is like we really sometimes I feel struggle in these academic and social discussions that what exactly empathy is. I think it can be oversimplified also.
So you also have a history in your background about refugees, and the point that you're looking at is about what do people mean by empathy, maybe the definition of empathy.
Yeah, so a lot of my research, whatever little based on my age I have done, went into that, and I really believe that the first thing point from where empathy starts is that you acknowledge that you cannot truly know the other person. That is the first foremost task you do, that you acknowledge that you really cannot know the other person completely and their experiential reality.
Yeah, so the starting point is to just acknowledge that you can never fully 100% understand the other person.
And as Alex also said before, I think I also struggle with that. That sometimes when you meet someone different or someone you disagree with, what you immediately do is that you sort of reduce or dehumanize the person in a way to your own experiences, existence, and expectations. And you convert that person into a theoretical concept now, not really a human being based on certain parameters.
Yeah, and like Alex, that you have that same experience that when you meet someone new, that you might reduce them to a stereotype or something like that, not see them as a fully human being.
Yeah, so I think one thing that has really helped me in that journey in peacemaking or in just in my personal life is literature. I was initially a literature student before I was an IR student. And I realized that in literature, how you empathize with characters, even if the characters are misconstrued or really dark or gray. And my favorite example would be Crime and Punishment, that how you empathize with literally a murder to in an oversimplified way.
So you've really found what's helped you in understanding people better is reading literature. And for example, in the movie, not movie, the book Crime and Punishment, there's the murderer, and you actually learn to understand and maybe have some empathy and understanding for where they're coming from.
Yeah, so I would probably conclude by saying that one of the interesting way for me how the definition can be summed up, or one way of looking at it is that you acknowledge that some actions of the other, even if the actions you find oppressive or painful or hurtful in any sense, those particular actions do not mean that you know the entire person. So you, as your ego has to separate the actions of a particular person from the being of an entire person. You can say that I found XYZ action of Edwin bad, but immediately you jump to the conclusion Edwin is absolutely a horrible human being based on one action. That's where the problem lies.
Mhm. Yeah, so what you have to do, what you find is not just judge a person by their one action, like if they're a murder, they killed somebody, but really try to see what's behind that and see the fullness of who they are as a person, and try to see more deeply into who they are.
Yeah, and if I have time, very quickly, the last point I would say, I think it's also important when we are talking about empathy in conflict transformation to acknowledge that why the definition of empathy is important, because sometimes empathy is not always the most objective way to do things as well. It needs to be complemented with a lot of other lens. For example, I might be naturally more empathetic towards a person who looks like me than an outsider. So that is something also that needs to be taken in mind, that it cannot always be objective. And thank
Yeah,
you.
so you need to understand that with empathy, that you may be giving more empathy to someone than others, and it's maybe not objective. So maybe understand the drawbacks of empathy. I think that was the time. Hope that was.
I feel heard.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Great. Surja, can you
More
pronounce
class. Sorry. All right. I'm just with my kids.
Oh yeah, that's.
One second. One second.
You're good.
We may start now.
Okay, great. Yeah, in terms of empathy, I think what we're doing here, I've been studying empathy for about 14 years. And what we're doing here, I think, is one of the best first steps for building empathy.
Edwin is saying that, he has been studying empathy for 14 years, and whatever we're doing now is one of the best things that we need to do.
Yeah, this is the empathy circle. I find is the best first step, sort of gateway empathy building practice.
Oh, and this is the first gateway to enter or to understand fully about empathy.
Yeah, and because we're practicing it here, everybody here gets heard. Instead of somebody judging me right away by what I say, they first listen to me until I feel fully heard.
So this is sort of practical, implementation, because we're hearing, we're listening others' perspective, and we are not judging based on their experience or whatever. But this is we are listening intentional. We're doing intentional listening and understanding other person as well.
Yeah, so if Alex is saying, oh, something that Edwin says upsets me, before being upset, you first have to fully listen to it. So.
Okay, the example when Edwin says about Alex is that to upset somebody, we need to have fully understanding of other person.
Yeah, before being upset, like maybe I say something that upsets Alex, but before she can kind of express her upsetness, she has to fully listen to me until I feel heard.
Okay, this is complicated now.
Okay. Okay, let me put it another. I'm going to put it another way. Before you can get upset about something I say, you have to first listen to me fully. Yeah.
Okay. The example is, if I have to get upset about other person, I should be able to understand fully about that person. Without understanding clearly about others' perspective, we cannot get upset.
Yeah, well, you can get upset, but first you have to listen to me. You can be upset, but before you can express your upsetness, you have to first listen to the speaker.
To get fully upset, we need to understand other person's perspective completely.
And then let's say you're upset by something I say, but when it's your turn to speak, then you can share your upsetness. Say, hey, I don't agree with what you say. I think you're totally wrong. I'm really upset. But when you're the speaker, you can share that. But when you're the listener, you only practice the listening part of it.
It's okay to get upset, but when you are upset and then when your turn comes, you have to share why you're upset about others' person's opinion.
Yeah, and then it becomes a mutual empathy. A lot of times empathy is defined as, oh, I have to be empathic, but empathy is really about a mutually empathic relationship, creating a mutually empathic relationship where both sides start listening to each other.
So here, Edwin is saying that, active listening is not one-sided, or it should be mutually, understood or accepted. I think Edwin is talking here about acceptance of, different ideas here.
Yeah, well, it's not, you don't have to accept the idea, but you have to hear them and understand them, try to understand them. So you don't have to accept it. Like someone says, hey, I think we should murder everyone in the world. You don't have to accept that. You can just say, I hear and understand what you're saying, but I don't accept that when it's your turn to speak.
Okay, Edwin is saying that it's not, we need to accept whatever your friend or your opponent is saying, but you just need to understand and listen to carefully.
And I'll say one other thing is also my reason for being interested in empathy is because my parents were refugees after World War II. So they were they lost all their lands, half my family was killed. And so I think empathy is very important to stop those type of wars that create these refugees.
So the reasons why I'm so much interested in empathy is that my parents were also, my parents, great-grandparents were also involved in after Second World War. They became refugees, and half of his families were killed because of this war. So I'm really interested in this empathy.
Yeah, so it's similar, I guess, to your situation. And that's my time. I feel fully heard.
Oh, thank you.
Now, Siraj, you get to pick someone to, you get to pick someone to listen to you. You get to speak again, 5 minutes in small chunks, and someone will listen and reflect like we've been doing in a circle. You can pick anyone because we've all had a turn now.
Yeah, I would call Alex for this time. So after resettlement in the United States in 2009, I have been involved with many of my fellow Bhutanese to find solutions of the conflict that took place in 1990s.
Mm-hmm. So through resettlement in the US, you were able to connect with many other Bhutanese and share ideas around peace moving forward.
There are four major things that we want to address. They are more than 100,000 Bhutanese are resettled in the United States, and they are separated from their loved ones.
Mm-hmm. So there are four main things that you wanted to focus on. One of them being 100,000 Bhutanese that have been separated from their loved ones resettling in the US.
And there are more than 50 political prisoners facing life sentences in Bhutan just because they raised their voice for human rights and democracy in 1990s.
Mm-hmm. Another one is the 50 people that have been detained because they spoke out against human rights violations in Bhutan in the 1990s.
We want them to be released.
Mm-hmm. You as a group want them to be released.
And there are more than close to 8,000 Bhutanese refugees in Nepal who have been there since 1990s without any foreign assistance, and we want permanent solution for those people.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that you want is foreign assistance for the 8,000 Bhutanese refugees currently in Nepal without support.
And we want their permanent solution.
Could you repeat that again, sorry?
We want a permanent solution for those refugees.
Mm-hmm. And you're seeking a permanent solution for those refugees in Nepal.
Right, and during the expulsion of Bhutanese citizens in 1990s, more than 80,000 were made illegal immigrants in their own country.
Mm. In the 1990s, the expulsion of up to 80,000 people made them illegal in their own country.
And we want a solution for those people as well.
And part of what you want is a solution for these people also. So
Peace Initiative Bhutan tries to bridge the gap between government of Bhutan and Bhutanese in diaspora, bring them together for a dialogue and find a common ground and find and engage to holistic peace building process and work toward shared prosperity.
Mm-hmm. So Peace Initiative Bhutan is working towards shared prosperity and peace building by engaging with refugees, diaspora, and the current Bhutanese government around solutions to these challenges that arose in the 1990s.
It is tough because the conflict took place in 1990s. We are 35 years away, and we are dispersed around the world.
Because of the conflict that occurred over 30 years ago, you are dispersed across the world, and the time that's passed makes the makes the conflict difficult to resolve. And
government of Bhutan and international communities like United Nations and other communities think that this issue has been resolved.
Many important international actors, including the government, feel that this issue is already resolved.
But the consequence of this conflict and the expulsion has been dreadful to Bhutanese in diaspora.
Regardless of how long ago the conflict was, the ongoing impacts have been felt disastrously by Bhutanese diaspora and people that experienced the conflict.
One main reason is Bhutanese Americans have the highest suicide rate nationally and globally due to family separations.
Bhutanese Americans experience one of the highest suicide rates, and many of the reasons for this might stem back to the original conflict and the separation from family and support.
Even though we become Bhutanese, we become American citizen, Bhutan does not allow or does not give us a visa to even enter to Bhutan.
Despite being born or coming from Bhutan and now being an American citizen, you're denied entry into the country that you were born.
That is impeding our family reunification process.
And this blocking impedes the possibility for families to reunite after so long apart.
So now Peace Initiative Bhutan thinks that understanding each other, finding common ground with empathy would help resolve this conflict.
Having a sense of empathy at the core of all of these interactions would support conflict resolution.
Thank you.
Okay, Alex, you can now ask someone to speak, and to listen to you as you speak. Again, you can speak on the subject that's in the chat or whatever is alive for you.
Well, I'll choose Edwin.
Okay, listening.
Okay, well, first of all, I was just excited to hear someone talk about Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, because I also like that book very much.
Yeah, you're really happy to hear someone talking about Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment, because you really like that book too.
Yes, and I suppose as we're going through the empathy circle, I'm getting a good sense of how it works and how the process is really broken down into very manageable chunks so that people get the opportunity to specifically and slowly practice the skill.
Yeah, so you really, as you're doing more of the empathy circle, you're getting to understand it more and seeing how it's sort of broken down into little pieces to really practice the skill. And
I quite like that, because when there's so much structure to it, it's hard to get it wrong. You just follow along with the specific kind of instructions in a very short window of time. So if you get it wrong, you have multiple chances to retry it again.
Yeah, you appreciate the structure because it's very structured. And if you get it wrong, the structure kind of corrects that, then you can try again.
I suppose that when thinking critically about this, though, one of the things that comes to mind for me is that people that are interested in this process and are interested in learning might all have very similar views and feelings anyway. So in some ways, is it not just an echo chamber? And are people with radically different ideas and opinions likely to also want to be learning this skill in this way?
Yes, you're concerned that it might be just like an in-group. The people who want to take part already are sort of the choir, singing to the choir, and you have a concern about that to want maybe get a broader, will inhibit a broader audience.
And maybe one of the other things, the questions that's coming up for me is, well, how does this process work when maybe there are very different power differentials, for example? Like if one person holds a lot of power and the other person not much power, like how might this process account for that?
And you're just wondering, like, how do power differentials play out within an empathy circle? If someone has a lot of power and someone not less, what happens there? So maybe just sort of questioning that.
But I notice for myself that I don't have a very kind of large window of tolerance, in the sense that if I find someone else's opinion or ideas or way of doing things really personally frustrating or personally disparaging or disrespectful, I tend to just disengage and want to disconnect and move my attention elsewhere. And I fear that that's not a very productive or compassionate response to someone. Yeah,
so you're just noticing that if you kind of don't like the person, don't agree with them, that you tend to just withdraw and disengage, and that you're maybe questioning that as maybe not being a compassionate approach, maybe looking for ways to address that.
Yes, and so I really related to others when they were saying around not judging the person or seeing that person as a more complex set of personality factors rather than just what's being presented to us in the moment. I suppose, again, as I said before, intellectually that makes a lot of sense to me. And in the moment, I find that challenging because I tend to totalize a person or dislike them based on some of their ideas.
Yeah, so you kind of intellectually you could sort of understand that, see the deeper part of the person, but in the reality versus the theory versus the practice. In practice, you just have that desire to withdraw and not do it.
Yes, and the final part of that for me is that this tendency that I have is quite distressing because I am a social worker, and a deep part of my ethics and values is to be with people and to experience them just as they are. And yet this kind of blockage that I have or difficulty that I have gets in the way of me doing the kind of work that I really want to do.
Yeah, the type of work you want to do, and being in the social work, you need to listen to people. And then if you're withdrawing, it's really causing disconnection. It's not what you're really wanting to be doing. So it's a sort of a conflict, internal conflict you're dealing with there.
Yes, it is an internal conflict. And in a work setting and in a professional setting, I'm okay. It's more in my personal life that this really has become a problem.
Yeah, so in a work setting, you can kind of be there, listen to people, but in your personal life, it's different. You tend to maybe withdraw if you don't like the people in some way.
Yes, thank you. I feel heard.
Okay, I'll speak to Mandeep then. Next. Yeah, let's see. I'll start with some of the things Alex brought up is about power differentials. I think the empathy circle, because everyone gets heard equally, that it helps create more equality and address those power differentials.
You're continuing Alex's point in saying at least in empathy circles, everyone gets equal time. So it's democratic in that sense.
Yeah, because in power differentials, usually the person with power gets more time to speak and controls and does not necessarily reflect back what they hear the others say. But here you could be the president and somebody else be, homeless. The president has to listen to the speaker and, reflect back. So everybody gets heard to their satisfaction equally.
One good thing about these empathetic circles perhaps is that your socioeconomic status outside this Zoom room doesn't matter, and you have to come here and be an equal and equally listen to everyone with dignity and respect.
Yep. And yeah, dignity and respect, I say, and with empathy. So you got to have the empathy part. So the other one was, is this the choir? Is it meaning there is something, there are people who are coming or people who are interested in empathy, but people can learn this process by high profile people, politicians, etc., doing empathy circles with each other so others can see how it's done. So I think it's a matter of spreading the practice, really, yeah.
In order to not keep it confined to just like-minded people who are for the same cause, it's perhaps good to spread and include more and more different people from different areas of life.
Yeah, I ran for Congress as the empathy candidate. So the first thing I did is I reached out to the other candidates and I said, let's have an empathy circle, right? So it's a matter of, just like anything, you got to start somewhere and then spread it. But I think it's a good foundation to spread.
And one instance of spreading empathy circles to different people is your anecdote that when you stood for elections in Congress, you invited your, perhaps, if I'm not wrong, your opponent candidates as well in an empathetic circle, so that you could hear their views and spread the culture of empathy, to say.
Yeah, and to sort of spread this practice, it's something that could be taught in schools too. If children were already learning how to do an empathy circle in early grades, and then all the way through school, they'd be learning this mindset, and they could be mediators and good listeners just in all of their life.
And one perhaps should inculcate this value at a very young age, so this habit gets internalized and it comes organically from school education itself.
Yeah, exactly. And then also because it's highly structured, you don't need a lot of training. Like you're all here, I think the first time you're already really good at it, right? You've already learned it, and you can take it and share it with your friends and family and coworkers, and it can quickly spread because of the ease of the process.
Another advantage is that it's not rocket science. It doesn't require too many rules. Everyone can learn the basics and just go with it and keep on spreading it in their communities across the world.
Exactly. And then Sir Ja, with his Bhutanese community, he could be holding empathy circles with the Bhutanese community, and it's an opportunity for the different members of the community to really listen to each other. So it can be a good foundation for holding those dialogues that he would like to hold, for example, in between the government or different factions of the community. It's a structure that can hold that conflict.
And one example here from our discussion is Surat's example and how he can involve different stakeholders who are in opposition to each other and who are in difference with each other, and see in this, like you mentioned in the beginning, in a more democratic way where everyone has equal time to be heard and reflect on each other's experiences.
And we do that. We have an empathy tent that we take out to public spaces, especially when the political right and left are fighting with each other in public spaces. And we mediate with the empathy circle. And we've done mediation where after the mediation, the two parties are hugging each other. So I know it works.
And it's not merely personal, it can also percolate into the political spaces eventually. Once we have more trust and there are genuine results in the end, we can see most cutthroat competitors also hugging each other.
Yep, I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to, I guess, choose Linda since it's not there.
Okay. Hold on, let me get the clock. All right, I'm ready.
All right. A lot of insightful discussions again. Even I would like to start with the power indifferences point, because this was something I experienced, I think, firsthand when I was in Israel, and I was part of a lot of, as an observer, Israeli-Palestinian communities, which would gather and reflect with each other. And for obvious reasons, they would have a lot of stark differences.
Okay, so you want to talk about the power differential issue because you were in some groups and the other people, and it was everybody had power.
Yeah, I was in Israel where we were having sort of these, some sort of these circles in Israel among Israelis and Palestinians.
Oh, so it was a group with Israelis and Palestinians.
Yes. So obviously there were stark power differences between the two groups. One was one perhaps Palestinians were there to fight for their basic rights to an extent and voice their concerns, and Israelis were there. Some good civilians were there to make them understand that everyone is not an oppressor and they are also here to help. So there were different needs of both the groups.
Okay, so the Palestinians were there to talk about their oppressions and their rights, and the Israelis were there to say, you're not oppressed. We're all equal. Everything is okay.
Yes. So if one group was looking for their self-esteem or something not very tangible, internal, another group was perhaps looking for something very practical and basic. So I also find power differences very tricky when it comes to mediation or any kind of peace work, and it's something I struggle with a lot.
Okay, and you struggle with this power differential in mediations, because when you were going back to the Palestinians and the Israelis, one group was looking for self-esteem and the other one was more about practicalities.
Yes, and sometimes this can even, I have heard it, like, can cause me some level of distress where you have so much information, and if I can use the word, you over empathize at times with different groups, and you just cease to function practically,
Okay.
and you get too much stress that, okay, how am I going to figure out these are too many emotions?
Okay, so you can get too much information coming at you, and you can, as you say, over empathize or empathize too much, and you're like, how am I going to deal with this, with all of these emotions coming at me at one time? So it's information overload. It can be a challenge.
Yes, essentially. And another point which is not related, but it crossed my mind in terms of empathy, that when Edwin was mentioning that these circles, I think, are also very important, because when we talk about empathy or read about it in our own isolated time, it's something different. But here, if you can really practice it in your own real time with other people, I think it really changes, because then you are doing action first and then thought, instead of saying, "Oh, I will be empathetic," and then try to be one.
Okay.
You just sort of dive in and you have to swim, and then you figure your way out backwards.
Yeah, so what you like Edwin said, you just dive in and do it. Because some people, when you read about empathy and write about it, it's one thing, but when you actually practice it, when you actually just jump in there and do it, it's a different deal, because people do have a different concept about what empathy is by reading or whatever. But when you do it, it's an action. You're seeing it.
Yes. And sorry, I'm going through my notes, what I wanted to say quickly. And
You're gonna
yeah, I think that's about it. I think right now that's all I had in my mind. We
okay.
heard.
All right. You had made some notes and you think you said everything that you wanted to say right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you feel heard to your satisfaction?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to go back to Alex. And I'm going to talk about some of the things. I also made notes that other people have talked about here. One of them is the power differential. If you're actually holding a empathy circle like we are now, then the facilitator has the power. That's situational power. You, as I do in mediation, I set the parameters within which we're going to work. And if someone, we're not going to talk over each other, we're not going to do this, we're not going to call names or, insult the other person. And during the process, if somebody gets emotional and they go off track and they start doing those things, then rather than chastising them, I come back and I'll say, remember, we all agreed that we would not do A, B, C, D.
Mm-hmm.
So it puts the responsibility back on the person.
Mm-hmm. So Linda is picking up on some of the points that have been made so far about power differentials. And you're acknowledging that there is power, and that power sits with the mediator or the facilitator. And that power is enacted in the way in which you bring people back to the agreed norms of how the discussion and how the conflict resolution process is going to go.
Yes. Now, when you're in a group, an informal group with your friends or whatever, and because I've done it, so I'm speaking from experience, that's where I practice my listening skills.
Yeah, so when you're in an informal group, such as with your friends, that's an opportunity for you to practice listening.
Yes, because we the girlfriends get together and we talk over each other and we're laughing and talking. And sometimes I will intentionally remove myself from the conversation by not speaking.
Mm-hmm. So in situations where you're with, for example, a group of girlfriends where there's lots of laughter, everyone's cutting each other off, you're all talking over the top of each other, you choose some of those moments to intentionally take yourself out of that dynamic.
Yes, by not speaking, I'm still there in person, but I'm listening to what each person is saying. So I'm practicing my listening skills.
Mm-hmm. So although you take yourself out, you're still there, present, and intentionally listening, and it's an opportunity for you to practice.
Yes. In one of our sessions, this lady said that we listen to respond. And that's the reason some of us have a problem intentionally listening.
So something that someone said that has stayed with you is that this idea that we listen to respond, and that's part of why it's challenging to deeply listen. Yes.
So when the person is talking, we're already formulating how we're going to respond or what we're going to say, rather than listening to them.
Yeah, so a barrier to deeply listening is that the mind is busy thinking of what to say next rather than just paying deep attention.
Yes. And when you can remove yourself emotionally from what is being said, especially when you don't agree, then you can do that by remembering it's not about me. It's about the person. Because your emotions are your emotions. And they're not responsible for that, the other person. So it's just about listening to what they have to say.
So for you, deeply listening is a little bit of a process, in some cases, of depersonalizing what the other person is saying. And one way of doing that is removing yourself emotionally. You're still there and available to listen and to reflect, but your own emotions and experience are removed from the interaction.
Yes, because I've mediated family cases, and there have been many instances where I think one party is crazy, but I can't say that, but I have to listen to what they're saying and try to figure out what they really need, what their interest is, what is driving this conflict.
As part of your role as a mediator, you have had to listen and seek to understand, despite a sense of knowledge or awareness that what people are asking for is actually inappropriate or crazy.
Yes. Finally, I want to say there's a difference between hearing and listening. You can hear a baby cry. You can hear a tree fall in the forest. You're there. But listening is intentional.
You describe that there is a real difference between hearing and listening, because hearing is a passive act. You can be doing something else while it's happening. And listening is an active act, which is that you need to be paying careful and attuned attention.
Thank you. I feel fully heard.
Okay, I'm going to choose Suraj to listen to me. A lot of this conversation is sparking lots of different ideas for me and lots of things that I want to mention about. One thing that really stands out to me is a comment that Edwin made, which is it's a structure that can hold a conflict.
This conversation is crucial, and there are lots of ideas talked about, but one idea is that Edwin brought up was structure that hold this empathy circle.
Yeah. So like the structure of the empathy circle can hold conflict. And that idea stayed with me because I can't really think of that many other structures that we have easy access to that can hold conflict well.
So it's interesting to me because Edwin said the structure can hold the conflict, and I've never known or thought about any other ideas that could hold the conflict.
Yeah, and I think, like, of course there are, but they're not structures that we have everyday access to, or that we can access without a lot of resources or a lot of high-level education, for example, like in government?
Of course, there are many, other, ideas or structures, but it's not easily accessible for us to get hold of those information.
Yeah, that's right. And then it kind of helped solidify that concept for me when Mandeep was saying that it's the ability to practice first, and you don't have to jump into the pool and then swim backwards. You don't necessarily need to have studied empathy to start just practicing it here.
Okay, and then the same idea also being solidified by the opinion led by Linda, saying that we don't have to understand or practice empathy, but we can learn it, and we don't have to practice. We don't have to put it in action first, but we can learn it, and then we can put it into practice. Did I get it right?
So it was referring to Mandeep's comment that actually we get to practice first, even if we don't have a deep intellectual learning of what empathy is. Okay.
So referring to Mandeep's idea that we need to practice first, right? Without learning about it.
Yeah, and I think that that makes a lot of sense for me, because throughout the course of my education, well, I can be a great student and I can do a lot of reading and I can like deeply invest in the intellectual and academic arguments around these ideas. And I'm still here because implementing that in day-to-day practice is a challenge.
So, I can be great, amass a lot of knowledge about empathy or structure by reading lots of books, get excellent in academics, but it is very difficult to implement those, challenging to implement those learned knowledge into practice.
Yes, and it's kind of like it is very hard to listen, which was Linda's point. Like at certain times I have had to remind myself to just stop thinking, and just, especially when I'm the active listener, just stop thinking and like, what is this person saying? And I'm surprised at how difficult I found that.
So at times when we have a lot of information, a lot of knowledge about it, but at times we find difficult to understand other person because we're not able to be in their situation or be able to understand their context.
Yeah, it's more like when someone is talking, I probably am listening to respond rather than just listening deeply to the words as they're being said.
So it's maybe because when someone is talking or sharing their ideas, I may be not carefully listening, but I'm trying to find out ways to respond to what they are saying. Yes.
And I like Linda's idea of removing yourself emotionally, but I think that is a skill, and can be a very difficult skill to develop, but I suppose that is what we're here developing.
So I also like the idea of Linda, who says that removing yourself from others' emotion. I think this is important, but it's difficult to bring into practice.
Thank you, Suraj. I feel fully heard.
Thank you.
And Suraj, you get to pick someone to listen to you.
Okay. Let me go with Alex.
Okay.
This is interesting topic, empathy. I have never participated in this kind of circle.
So the topic is interesting to you, and it's the first time you're participating in this kind of circle.
Empathy is very important to live our life, but also it's also important to find out or generate empathy on opponents.
So empathy is important, but it's also to be able to give empathy to the opponents in any discussion.
Bringing an example about Bhutan, I always think about othering. The government of Bhutan did not think ethnic Nepalese, us as a Bhutanese citizen, they othered us.
Because of the process of othering by the Bhutanese government, ethnic Nepalese have not been considered human to the same level.
Now, after 35 years also, we're thinking about our birth country, our memories from our our birth country. We are now empathetic to our country, to the people inside Bhutan.
So you have been on a long-standing process of thinking empathetically about your home country over the last 35 years and connecting with it.
But after so many years of our practicing empathy, we are not being heard.
But despite all of these years of doing that with the best of intentions, it's not resulted in you being heard.
So now the question is, how long and how do we generate empathy to our opponents, the government of Bhutan, so that both can accept the fact that, you know, whatever happened in 90s should not continue, and need to first foster a new relationship for our future.
So while people on your side of the conflict have been practicing empathy for a very long time, some of that empathy is unmet. And you're questioning, how do we encourage the opponent to start engaging in empathetic processes as well, so that we can all move forward?
It could be, you know, my personal thing is I'm here first time into learning about empathy, you know, accepting others, understanding other side as well. So maybe you know, our group may need a structured empathy circle, so that they learn more about empathy itself, and then be able to, you know, bring in other side in the circle.
So one of the ways that could potentially be possible is through something as structured as an empathy circle, which kind of gives people a way to manage the conflict to move forward.
But the problem here is we are now in the United States, and there are, you know, people inside Bhutan, and there's no way we can come together and do this empathy circle.
But the problem of physical distance and the actual difference between the US and Bhutan makes that idea a bit challenging.
And the other thing is that we are not planning to go back to our native country and live there permanently. We just need the government of Bhutan accept the harm, acknowledge the pain and suffering of exiled Bhutanese, and then, you know, find a common ground and work towards our shared prosperity. And that's what we were looking for.
Accepting the pain and the harm and the damage is important for exiled Bhutanese to be able to move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and recovery.
That's what I have, and thank you. I'm fully heard.
Should I go again?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Let me just come back to my note. I'll choose Mandeep to listen to me. Okay, so
Wait, he's muted. He's muted. Let him unmute. Mandy,
Sorry, I'm
yeah,
listening.
there you go.
yeah, coming back to some other points, I guess I was curious about how Edwin's candidacy went, and his invitation to invite politicians in for an empathy circle. I would love to know how that went for him.
So Alex is curious, how did the empathy circle with your candidates went who was standing against you in the elections?
And it makes me think of other times in my life where, like, an empathy circle could have been a really good way to move forward on something, like even in very personal circumstances, like in a family, for example, and wishing like, oh, this is a tool that like has so many practical places to try. what a shame that I'm only coming to know it now. So many things could have been prevented.
So if I'm not wrong, you are realizing that instead of going for the conventional ways of dealing with dilemmas and arguments in your personal life, now you realize this is something you could have done, which is also ethical but practical at the same time and has a lot of real-time benefits.
Yes. And I suppose like one of the things that I find kind of protective about this space is that we are, well, we are 5 here in this room. And so it's quite easy to sit back and allow people to take their roles. And I wonder, out of curiosity, like, would it be that easy if it's only 2 people?
So right now there are 5 people, so there is a nice flow to it. It's shuffling, but it's not a lot. So you also had curiosity, what if it's just 2 people? How would it go, right?
Yes, exactly. And I don't know if Empathy Circle, I think it can happen with 2 people, but I would imagine that it might be like increasingly hard to remove yourself emotionally when there's just 2 people. But I don't know, maybe others have different experiences of that. Mandeep, you're frozen.
Oh, sorry. Am I back?
Yes.
You could
Yeah.
turn off your video if it's a bandwidth issue.
Let me see. I will just, at least until this round, I will. So I think, okay, I lost my train of thought. So maybe between 2 people, I think it's too intimate, and sometimes it can be maybe a little bit more explosive than rather having a decent medium-sized group.
Yes, exactly. Like, I think that's a good word that you used, explosive. Like, it can be a little bit harder without the accountability of a group to stick to the rules and to the norms.
Yes, as you are saying that there might not be a facilitator, so there will be just 2 people going at each other. So it can be a little bit more hard and less structured rather than a circle.
Yeah. And I also wonder if this process, even this structured, is hard for some people. Maybe they find it hard to reflect on their experience, or maybe they find it hard to listen, or there are language barriers which makes it hard to respond to people. So I guess I was curious about what happens in those circumstances as well.
And you were also wondering that there might be some logistical problems or communication issues, and how they would be sorted out when especially we are trying to empathize and understand each other in a better way.
Yes, thank you. I feel fully heard.
I think I would choose Edwin.
Okay, listening.
All right, so I would start with Linda's and Alex's point. I think that we listen to respond. That's why some of the times we have problems. It's very weirdly reminded me of this sentence that we get into the habit of thinking. We get into the habit of living before we get into the habit of thinking. So if I paraphrase it, we get into the habit of responding before we get into the habit of listening, I guess.
So you're just wanting to share that this quote of listening to respond instead of listening to understand, and it's parallel to the other quote of something about listening, living. Thinking instead of living instead of thinking.
Yeah. So to further push this idea, I was wondering that we have this urge to respond in our relationships or in a sort of conflict, which maybe something to do with the relationships that we want to.
Oh, Mandeep.
Mandeep, you're really breaking up. Mandeep, Mandeep, you're frozen and you're breaking up. Can you
Is it
turn off your,
better?
can you turn off your, and say it again. You were really breaking up.
Apologies for that. I was trying to say that maybe one of the, to further push the idea of responding then listening, I think it has something to do with the instrumentality of relationships, that we sometimes always want to unconsciously achieve something or go somewhere through a relationship, even the most intimate ones.
Oh, so it's, you think that maybe the cause for wanting to respond instead of listening is because we want to go somewhere. We have an intention of going somewhere.
Yes, and I think and this is not me, I read it somewhere. I think it was a New York Times article by some feminist writer who said this very interesting sentence, that empathy should be like a verb rather than a noun. So if you really want to listen to someone, you have to be a little bit of selfless and impersonal to exclude that instrumentality of a relationship.
So you're seeing, to listen, you need to set it. You need to set yourself aside in that instrumentality.
Yes, if in other words, you should not be having a preconceived notion of trying to achieve something out of a conversation. I think that's what she meant.
So the meaning is not to have a preconceived notion of where of the conversation, but let it sort of evolve on its own.
Yes, and lastly, I think I would point out to what Suraj said, and I should first take some caution because I don't yet fully understand his story. But I think the interesting point what he said is that it's like he and his group who were also involved, they have been empathizing, but with no result. So I think it's also important that when one is empathizing, and it's also important that it is sometimes a contradiction movement in two different directions, that you are not sacrificing your rights, you are very strongly and clearly affirming them and standing them, but you are also saying that I am also not going to dehumanize even if the other party really has hurt me. So I think it is the sweet spot between appropriating and rejecting your enemy in double quotations, that you are not saying, oh, I know this
Okay,
enemy.
you may want to pause there, Mindy.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, so I think part of it is you're seeing it's mutual empathy, the issue that you shouldn't like give up yourself, but but be willing to listen to the other person too, and not dehumanize them. But the other part was that it's a mutual, make it mutual, and you still have your points of view.
Yes, I feel heard. Thank you.
Oh, okay. I think you still had more time, but
Yeah.
you have more time if you had more.
Yeah, I can elaborate perhaps. I was trying to say that, yeah, that to empathize with someone, one does not have to sacrifice one's self-esteem. And at the same time, when one is empathizing with someone, it's very difficult and to implement practically, but one has to find how one does not stereotype the other person, but also not completely reject or discard the other person.
Okay, so it's sort of a balance. You don't want to stereotype the other person, and you also don't want to give up your own point of view. So you need to be able to hold your own point of view and sort of empathize with the person and not stereotype them.
Yes.
And that was the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'll just keep it short. Linda, can I speak to you?
Sure.
I wanted to address again, that equality and power differentials within the empathy circle. So I'll start, talk about that.
You want to address the power differential in the empathy circle. That's where you're going to start.
Yeah, it's not like the facilitator has all this power. Like, Linda, she's not like taking over the whole thing, doing all the talking. She's actually, as a facilitator, all she's been doing is keeping the process going in an equal way that anybody could do in this circle.
So you're saying that you're recognizing that I don't have power in terms of controlling everybody and doing all the talking. My power is just, or purpose is just to keep the flow going, keep the process going.
And it's actually, everybody has that responsibility. Like it's when we come into the circle, everyone has the responsibility of keeping the process and the structure going. So there is sort of that mutual responsibility too.
And so everyone in the circle has a responsibility of keeping the process going. So it's a mutual responsibility within the group.
And the facilitator does most of the work in new groups like this, like groups where people are not familiar with the practice, they're still learning it. You know, the first couple rounds, everybody's sort of nervous, learning the practice, trying to understand what's going on. And that's where the facilitator kind of helps everyone sort of learn and stay in the process.
So the facilitator is really active when there's a group of people that have not participated in a circle before. So as to just keep the process going, make people feel comfortable, because at first they're nervous and concerned that they're not going to get it right or whatever, but just, you know, make everybody comfortable and feel safe and keep it going.
And once everybody knows it, if like in this group, the 5 of us, if we've done a couple empathy circles, you almost don't even need a facilitator. All you need is the timekeeper to keep time, because everybody already knows the practice. So there's very little for the facilitator to do after everybody knows the practice.
Yeah, once everybody in the circle knows the process, the facilitator can just keep time, focus on the time, and enjoy the session.
Exactly.
Participate in it.
And in terms of just 2 people being in the in an empathy circle, that's great for couples, right? If you know, romantic husband, wife, whatever, couples, or even families where there's just 2 people, you can, you know, have an empathy circle to kind of address conflicts. Or my partner and I, we periodically just do empathy circles, so listening so that everyone feels heard. So there's a lot of practices that sort of teach this for, you know, good relationships.
So, you know, it can be beneficial in a 2-party system where it's just 2 people, be it husband, wife, or, you know, significant other, or a child, parent, child. It can work in that same situation.
Yeah, so let's see what else. I guess we're going to be closing the room pretty soon in a minute. So let's see what else. I guess that's it for me. I'm going to hit the close room in a second here.
Okay,
I
all
feel
right
fully
then.
heard.
Yes. Do you want to debrief in here, or just wait till we get to the room?
We could do just a quick, you know, 30-second debrief
Yeah.
for everyone, then close the room, and we'll debrief again in the full room.
Alex, do you want to just, before we're beamed up to the main room, have any questions or comments, or just something about your experience today?
I really liked the process. I found it really useful. It went beyond what I thought it would, and I learned a lot from hearing the people speak, but also a lot from hearing other people respond to them in different words and different meanings.
You're welcome to come back to the cafes, actually do the training.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Sergey, you're muted.
Okay, yeah, Suraj. Yeah, well, this is a new thing for me. I have never participated in this kind of, you know, circle space. I felt that I have a lot to learn about empathy and as Edwin said, structured empathy. So I think I want to practice that in my community here in the United States, and I really need help on that as well. But this is so good. Thank you.
Thank you for participating. You're invited back as well. And you can use this via Zoom with your group in the States, brainstorming on ways to connect with family, get over those challenges. Mandy?
Oh, I think it was great. I learned a lot listening to others and getting a lot of new ideas in. And it was just a great way, as I said, to practice empathy and just to keep on listening to people. So I think I'll definitely come back and do this more.
Yeah, and before I enjoyed this group. You all are great. Y'all just picked it up. It was wonderful. I love it. So hopefully you will participate in the training. It's good. It's good. We're finna be beamed up to
Yeah,
the,
people will be
they're
popping
coming
in. We have
back.
about 40 seconds.
Okay,
They'll
Edwin.
all be back. And then, yeah, I hope you'll take the training. I'll be doing a debrief in a second, so you can also share what you just shared to the full group.
Hello, Brenda.
Who is that?
Linda.
Oh, Linda, how are you?
You know how I am.
Look, I have my
Anxiously
glasses on.
waiting.
I have to pull my glasses off so I can see.
Oh, yeah. You and me both. We go back and forth, back and forth.
Oh, you grew.
So everybody's coming back. Like, what is it? Star Wars, Star Trek?
Star
We're being
Trek,
beamed
beam
back.
me.
Yeah.
You're being
Yeah.
beamed into the main room. They'll be here in a second. Yeah, they're.
And people are
There we go.
smiling. That's good. Happy, happy, happy.
Welcome back, everybody. So Larry is going to lead us in a debrief, and then Edwin is going to close us out. So over to you, Larry.
Thank you, Kathy. So, to the best of my ability, I'm going to go around this huge room and ask everyone if they would take maybe 30 seconds to a minute to share, how does the empathy circle feel? How would it interact with peace, with conflict resolution? What was your experience today of participating in an empathy circle? How could this work out? And I'll start with, I may pronounce this correctly and I may not. Is it Ileona? Leona, would you share your experience?
And we do want to take 30 seconds because we have 34 people and only like 50.
Yeah, maybe we could just have people raise their hand if you're wanting to do the react. Just raise your hand. Larry can call on you, but we're not going to get to everyone. Just anyone that wants to share.
All right, great. Would anyone like to raise your hand and take about 30 seconds to share your experience of the empathy today? And I saw Gisela's hand is up. Gisela, go ahead.
Hello. Yes, so I was talking about this with my smaller group, but I found the process to be complicated to navigate, and I feel like this is bringing I'm a Mexican woman, I'm from Mexico, and I think that it felt very engineered to me instead of feeling organic in a way of being empathetic, active listeners that are reflecting the ideas back to the person who is sharing, but also allowing for that kind of authenticity and flow to be experienced so that the full conversation works as a more engaging space. So I think that I love the basis of it, but I also found it uncomfortable because it just felt too structure and norm oriented in a way that I didn't feel as welcome or as organically present, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Giselle. And Leslie, would you share your experience, please?
Oh, sure. I always love being in empathy circles because it's so nice to know there are other people like us in the world who actually care about this. And my experience today was just really wonderful. Just hearing about, we had a group that was really about issues that were changing society and changing our world. And that's just so great. And just really happy to be part of this. And this is what will change the world. This is what will bring us to peace.
Thank you, Leslie. And Beata, would you share, please?
Did you ask me, Larry?
If you would, please.
For me, it was wonderful. I always feel inspired by the topic and what people share and people I'm meeting. So very positive experience.
Thank you, Beata. And Alex, would you share, please?
Sure, thank you. I was just going to respond to Giselle's comment because in my line of work in social work, we're often doing a lot of work in a therapy context where it's a very deep and organic conversation and lots of back and forth. And so I did feel that initially in our empathy circle. I thought, oh, wait, let the person finish, or I'll just let them keep talking. But I suppose as we moved through, one thing that one of our group members said, which was that an empathy circle is a really good structure to hold conflict. I could really appreciate the methodology and the structure for being a space that, because it is so norm oriented and offers so much kind of structure around listening and responding, that I really value it. Is my first time. I really value it as being a place that can contain and hold challenging and difficult conversations in a way that more organic platforms might really struggle with.
Thank you, Alex. And Jide, would you share, please?
Thank you. So I'm a professional mediator and a mediation teacher, and I've been doing that for 27 years. And one of the things I've been trying to do is teach empathic listening. And what this has done for me is make me understand what I've been trying to do. And so I'm going back a better mediator and a better mediation teacher.
Thank you, Jide.
Really nice.
Amelia, would you share, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Larry. First of all, it's like I mentioned earlier, this is my first time joining the Empathy Circles. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I had Larry, Jide, and Orain in my group, and I felt it was a privilege to exchange ideas with you guys. The ideas you shared was profound and inspiring to me. And to Giselle's point earlier, initially, when we first discussed the structure of the discussion, it did feel a little bit inorganic to me and a little bit mechanical initially as it was explained. But as we started conversation within amongst our group, it felt very organic. And I think we just made that connection with each other. And once we made that human connection, it felt like a conversation, and it flew very beautifully. And I thought it was pretty organic, and I loved it.
Thank you, Amelia.
Thank you.
Divine, would you like to share your experience today? Would you share, Divine? How about Crystal? Would you share, please?
Yeah, as always, I leave the Empathy Circle learning something new about the people in our community, in our world. And I believe the Empathy Circle is that radical change that we need in war, in peace, and creating a world of peace and overcoming war and transitioning from authoritarian leadership into a democracy where we all have a voice, we all have a seat at the table, and we all have the capacity to speak our truth. And it's just a privilege to be here with each of you.
Thank you, Crystal. And Sally, would you share, please?
Yeah, hi. I loved my group. Nada left a little early because of a child. Then there was Samuel, DJ, and Ilana. And the concept of a U.S. bill, truth, racial healing, and transformation. And I just wanted to say that we need a bill on requirements that our legislature and Congress and the president need to have qualifications in climate science and medicine with PhDs. I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Sally. And Dwayne, would you share, please?
Yes. For me, as a facilitator, this was one of the most challenging empathy circles I've ever facilitated. And it was a really great learning opportunity for me. And I enjoyed the experience, even though it was incredibly challenging. I'm also reminded about the importance, I believe if I want to contribute to world peace, first, I got to work on the inner peace inside of me. If I want to share love with the world, then it's important for me to work on self-love. I also think it's really important that the language we use to talk about these things also evolves. And that we could take a whole day talking about the importance and how language influences our experience, how it influences my experience. And so I'm going to continue to do the personal work that I feel that I need for myself so that I continue to grow and evolve as a person. And I will continue to participate in these types of activities because as a global citizen, I think it's important for us to find a way to speak and to listen to each other. And I'm thankful for the people who set up this opportunity, and I'm glad I was able to participate today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. And Samuel, would you share, please?
Thank you. For me, something I found resonating with our group was the deep desire to contribute to peace, and how pivotal empathy circles are to co-creating this peaceful world that we long for. And there was the beauty of interconnectedness across 4 different continents, from Africa, Europe to America. And I love that. Yeah. And I'm grateful for this space. At first, I was quite hesitant to step in as a facilitator because it was the first time being in this specific empathy circle. But now after the session, I'll be glad and joyous to just step in as a facilitator after this experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Samuel. And Branka, would you share, please?
Thank you so much, everybody. This was really interesting experience, and I'm still reflecting on 2 levels, both on the format of the conversation and empathy circle, and then on such a rich content that people actually brought through their conversations, and realizing how important this is also on a personal level, because I'm coming from a conflict country, from conflict area. And I'm just seeing the benefit of having such exercise in my own community. So this is what I'm hoping we will have more opportunities to actually practice this type of conversation in our real lives.
Great, thank you. I think we need to start closing now. Okay. And we're doing this again the 3rd Saturday in January. But we always have empathy circles on Saturdays. You can come anytime. And I'm going to turn it over to Edwin. He can explain more about this for you.
Yeah, I'm going to put a link into the chat. It's to the feedback form. So this is a way for you to connect with us and stay in connection. If you go there, maybe you can click on it right now while while it's still fresh. You just click on that, and it'll open up a Google form, and you can go through and add your email, your contact information, and just give any sort of feedback, like, if you had things you enjoyed or didn't enjoy about the empathy circle practice. We'd love to hear those. It is the practice. I do find, having worked 14 years now on the topic of empathy, started the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy. The empathy circle, I have found, is the best first step gateway practice to building empathy skills. It's really good for just offering support to others, for heading off conflicts before they happen, facilitating conflict once they do happen, and for hearing people, for designing solutions to any of life's problems and products and services. So it has a lot of different benefits. And so let me just see what we have here. So on the in the feedback form, you can give your feedback, like I was saying, and you can also suggest topics. We're going to be doing these with the peace building, conflict mediation, transformation community once a month. So we do have one. It's December 17th, and then in January 14th. So you'll also get on our list for announcements, and you can also sign up to volunteer. Like, if you'd like to help out with volunteering, you can help promote the event. You can learn about facilitating, so you can facilitate breakout circles. And you can also help us sign up other organizations. We're looking for other organizations that would like to be co-hosts with this, organizations that are in the conflict resolution community. And we're also going to stay, we're going to close now, but we're going to, if you want to stay just like 10, 15 minutes after, if you're interested in being a volunteer. So we'll give a little bit of Q&A around being a volunteer going forward. So with that, we usually like to end our cafes with jazz hands. So you get everybody doing jazz hands, get a group portrait, get those mirror neurons going, and see you next time. It was such a pleasure having you all take part, and really look forward to you taking part next time and continuing this conversation. So goodbye for now.
Thank you, Edwin.
Thank you.